This Reds lineup is going to be so good that their production is going to be bold. Just how bold? I'll tell you on today's Locked On Reds Live Aloha Podcast.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Aloha. You are Locked On Reds, your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr. We love baseball. We love these Cincinnati Reds, and we have taken our love for the game. We have taken our love of this team, and we have turned it into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's podcast, Jeff has the boldest of his bold predictions. I don't even know what's coming here, folks. So all I can say is let's you and I buckle up together and we will learn about it on the fly. What would it have looked like if the Reds had been in on the Dylan Cease trade? We're going to take a look at the trade, what it would have meant if the Reds had made kind of a corresponding deal and break it down from there. Adam Duvall is returning to Atlanta, and with him off the market, are the Reds signaling that they are ready to roll with what they've got in the outfield? We'll tell you whether or not we think that's true and whether or not we think that's a good idea. Plus, we will be taking your questions and comments all along the way. And of course, at the very end, we put you in the driver's seat for the Q&A segment. All right, Jeff, the floor is yours. Bold away.
So here we go. We've been doing this where we make regular predictions and we make bold predictions. The idea is regular predictions set you up for what to expect for this season. Bold predictions are if everything goes right. If there's lightning in a bottle in a lot of different cases and the Reds hit their top level of performance, which leads me to believe that the talent in this lineup will produce, this is a bold prediction, at least 866 runs, which would mean they would score the most runs in the modern era for a Cincinnati Reds lineup. Which, by the way, Steve, do you know who scored 865 runs? The most runs that the Reds have ever scored in a season?
Nope.
The 1999 Cincinnati Reds, one of my favorite teams ever, one of your favorite teams ever.
On everybody but Al Leiter.
Yeah, unfortunately. Why'd you have to bring him up? But no, the Reds are going to score 866 runs this season. When you look at the talent that is brought to the table, when you look at their ability to get on base, their ability to take the extra base, their ability to steal bases, to constantly put pressure on opposing pitchers. And oh, by the way, you got some dudes with some really high upside. So on the bold end of that, if they hit their upside, this team could break the record for most runs scored in a season by a Cincinnati Reds team. Now, to be fair, there are like 4 or 5 1800s Reds teams that scored over 900 runs. That'd be really hard to do. But for modern era baseball, 866 runs will get it done. I think this team can do that.
866 is what you're saying.
866.
So they have to score 5.3 runs per game all season long. I think that's a little too bold, sir. While this team is going to have the option or the ability to score some runs, while there will be times when they're firing on all cylinders, they will put that kind of run production on the board. There are going to be ebbs and flows to this thing, peaks and valleys, if you will, where they will score sometimes and then they won't. They're all going to be in their sophomore seasons, all of the rookies. They're going to, have their ups and downs. Take on top of that, the pitching situation in Major League Baseball is dramatically different in 2024 from the way that it was in 1999. Again, there aren't many Al Leiters rolling around in Major League Baseball now. Everybody's throwing 100. Everybody's got stuff that dives off the table 17 inches before it falls to the plate. I think it'd be awful hard for a bunch of young players to put together the type of season you're talking about in year 2. That's not to say that somewhere along the way it can't happen, but I think that's a little too bold little too bold for me before I've got a whole cup of coffee in my system.
Well, and here is why
I'm taking the under is what I'm saying. If you're taking the under
800. So the over under will be 865.5 runs scored by the Reds team. I'm taking the over. And the reason for that, this Reds team is immensely talented, but think of 3 guys who are going to be in the middle of this order who are going to be counted upon to do lots of run producing. Elly De La Cruz, did he play 162 games last year?
No.
Did he play 150 games last year?
No.
He played less than 100. Matt McLain, did he play 150 games last year?
Did not. Boy, I wish he had.
I wish he had too. Actually, I think Elly played more than him just because of the injury there toward the end of the season. Jeimer Candelario wasn't here. CES wasn't here for most of the season. You're talking about the heart of the order. These 4 guys, in some order, are going to be in the middle of this Reds order. And I believe that when you compare it to who really occupied the middle of the Reds order for much of last season, especially the first half of the season, the first month or 2 of the season there, you're going to compare very favorably. And looking at those and looking at the differences of people and personnel, the Reds scored 783 runs last year with Will Myers in the lineup for much of the first month, with Kevin Newman in the lineup at different points all year long. No one knew why. With Tyler Stevenson having a vastly underperforming year. I think Tyler Stevenson gets better. We don't have to worry about Will Myers and Kevin Newman in the lineup at all. And they have more power in this lineup than they had last year, and they hit a lot of home runs last year. I really believe this team can get to that plateau. I think it's bold. I don't think it's regular, but I think they can get there if everybody hits.
So what was the number for last year? Total run score?
783.
783. And they need to get to 866. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's 83
roughly you're looking 85, 90 runs, math on the fly. Again, I don't have my coffee in all the way,
which is only half a run a game.
I feel like that's Jeff, I feel like that's a bit of a big ask for a team that's still going to be finding its way and learning to be a playoff contender. So, I like it. I mean, look, if you're going to take big swings, my friend. And this is a big swing. And if it happens, you're going to come out of this thing looking like the prognosticator, because there's nobody talking about that this team's going to be the highest scoring team in team history, asterisk modern era. But I think they're going to be fun. I think where I can agree with you is they're going to score a lot of runs. They're going to hit a lot of home runs. They're going to steal a lot of bases. They're going to do a lot of things that generate runs. Over 5 runs a game. Listen, I'll take it. That pretty much guarantees that this team wins the National League Central. So if that's the direction we're going, if that is how it plays out, then, I will tip my hat to you. But I'm still taking the under.
And I think a regular prediction, I think a regular prediction for this team, I think they score at least 800 runs. We're not talking about a team that scores less than they did last season. And I don't think that the offense is the same. I think it's better. So I think that they will easily score 800. Now, like you said, the average of 5.3 runs per game, just about 5.5 runs a game. That is a little bit daunting, especially when you talk about, there's going to be slumps for these guys, because very few, if any, Major League Ball players have ever gone through an entire season without hitting some kind of slump. But I think that there is enough talent on this team that when someone else is, like when Elly's going through a slump, CES is going to be on fire. When CES is going through a slump, Candelario is going to be on fire. When Candelario is going through a slump, you're going to have Tyler Stevenson, or you're going to have Matt McLain, you're going to have Spencer Steer. Those guys, there's so many guys on this team that are run producers, but the rest of the lineup are glue guys. You don't have a guy in this lineup that you look at and you say, yeah, I don't know about him. Maybe he hits. Everybody in this lineup can hit.
All right. I'm still taking the under, but
that's fair. And look,
I don't know that it's I don't know that it's one of those that I don't think it should count in your tally. This is such a bold swing for you that we won't hold this one against you if it doesn't hit, I think.
And that's the point. That is the reason. That is what a bold prediction is. I also want everybody to know that I understand what a bold prediction is. A bold prediction is not, we're going to have 3 guys hit 20 or more homers. There's going to be 3 guys that fall out of bed with 20 homers in this lineup. It's how good can this team be? And their ceiling is the best run producing lineup that we have ever seen in the modern era of Cincinnati Reds baseball. I firmly believe that. Now, I didn't do runs per game. If somebody goes out there and does the math on
first 40 games last season, they averaged 4.01. This from our buddy Ken. And then after the first 40 games, the next 142, they averaged 5.1. So not very far off what you're talking about. That's when Matt McLain came up. So for you to have a chance at this, everyone has to be healthy and everybody has to be firing.
Right.
You have to get both of those things.
And I think it's a possibility, a slim possibility, but a possibility. Steve, Dylan Cease got traded. I don't know if you remember this, but during the offseason, we talked about Dylan Cease a lot. The Reds were rumored
about Dylan Cease a lot.
The Reds were rumored to get Dylan Cease, so we talked about it. He finally got traded. It went to the Padres, and I looked at how the deal compares for what the Reds would have had to give up. We'll talk about what that looks like coming up next. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer.
Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number 1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets back if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and even over-unders if you can pick who's going to win it all. Or you can check out some special Reds futures bets for the 2024 season, like Hunter Green to record 200-plus strikeouts in the regular season, and Elly De La Cruz to record 50-plus regular season stolen bases. That sounds like a pretty good bet to take together. Odds on that happening are 8-1, so there would be a pretty good payout for you if you head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now and get in on that action. You can bet on those futures. You can bet on college hoops all the way until they cut down the nets.
As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, you can mark your calendars for March 20th, next Wednesday, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the best MLB season preview, coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app.
Hey, Jeff, before we dive into this, let's I want to hijack the segment for just a minute because this is coming up a lot, and I know how we're going to split this up over the weekend. So I want to do this right now because it's super interesting to me. And I know we both saw right before we sat down to do this today, the Reds have signed Justin Wilson, old friend, the left-hander and added him to the bullpen. Here's where it gets really, really interesting for me. And thanks, Dard, for posting that in there. We saw it up earlier too. Wanted to talk about it. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Major league deal. On a minor league deal with a spring training invite. Major league deal. Alex Young also suffered a setback, so it looks like he's going to be out of the equation to start the season. Sam Mull does not appear that he's going to be ready at the beginning of the season. So it looks like they're going to go with 2 left-handers in the bullpen, but when we talked about needing 2 left-handers in the bullpen at the beginning of this offseason, I don't think either one of us had the combination of Suter and Wilson on our bingo cards.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one for me. I'm just really happy that they got Brent Suter because, I mean, would you just be talking about Justin Wilson by himself then? But yeah, I find it interesting that they signed him so willy-nilly. I mean, the Dodgers had like just cut him. He was good as a Red before he got hurt. So hopefully he can return to that form. But yeah, he's definitely going to be the second lefty and a placeholder. The major league deal is interesting to me because that means that there is no minor league component to this. And I think I read that he's getting $1.5 million. So are they just going to cut him whenever Sam Mull's ready? I cannot believe that they would keep him over Sam Mull.
This feels like one of those things they do where they definitely know something we don't and have been holding back information on someone. The concern for me is which one is the someone? Is this about Mull?
Yeah.
Or is this about Alex Young, where they were considering him to be their insurance all year? This feels like, with it being a major league deal, with they're going to have to put him on the 40-man. This feels like this is more about Sam Mull.
I could see that. And he was really, really good. Like, I think you're not getting insurance for Alex Young. So yeah, that would make sense. I hope that's not the case. And who knows, maybe Sam Mull's going to be fine and he just misses like a month or 2 or something like that. And then at some point this season, we have 3 lefties in the bullpen. Would that be too many?
You can never have enough lefties in the bullpen. Let me tell you.
No, you can't.
All right. Sorry to hijack you, Jeff. I just know everybody was talking about this and I wanted to get it here in the second segment before we dive into your love affair with Dylan Cease. So that being said, hashtag Jeff loves Dylan. Proceed.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if Wilson can kind of return to form for the Reds. But yeah, there was a trade the other day. Dylan Cease sent to the Padres. The Padres sent back to the White Sox. I'm not going to go through names. Like Drew Thorpe might be the only name that anyone really knows, but he was the number 58 prospect, so a top 100 prospect according to Baseball America. The other prospects there was 2 top 10 Padres prospects. That's a fun one to say 5 times fast. Padres prospects. And then there was a flyer, a guy that wasn't even in the top 30 for Baseball America in this deal. So 4 players total sent back to the White Sox. This is completely different from the reported trade that Nick Kroll turned down from the White Sox. That was the ridiculous Rhett Lauder, Edwin Arroyo, Chase Petty, Sal Stewart, and I think they even had they resurrected Willie Mays, or not Willie Mays. They brought back prime Willie Mays and said let's throw him in the deal. They asked for way too much on that one. Finally, Dylan trade rumors have been ceased. Yes, and actually our Locked On Guardians guys did a lot of funny puns about Dylan Cease on his name the other day. That was kind of fun. I did not prepare that much for puns and stuff, but no, I wanted to look at this because how it would look for the Reds. I mean, that means that Rhett Lauder would be in the deal because Drew Thorpe and Rhett Lauder are right next to each other in Baseball America's top 100. Then if you look at the Reds number 7 and number 9 prospects, that meant that Sal Stewart and Alfredo Duno would also be going to the White Sox. And then some guy outside the top 30. I don't necessarily know who that would have ended up being, but just pick a name that's not on a Baseball America list that we probably don't talk about hardly at all.
Daniel
Anyway.
Veoheen.
Yeah, I guess we could. He's outside the top 30. So yeah, I mean, that would have been the deal. The rumored deal, I had no interest in. Rhett Lauder plus Sal Stewart plus Alfredo Duno plus a flyer. I think I might have taken that.
Mm. You know, I think Nick Krall got this one right. He clearly got it right in the offseason when Chicago was on something with their ask. There was absolutely even with that ask was the conversation starter. That ask would have made me hang up. That being said, looking at how the deal would have panned out, let's say they revisited the conversation last week. I think it still would have been a hard stop for me. I think that what this team has built as far as starting pitching depth goes, 1 through 10 on starting pitching depth, I just don't think justifies trading away Rhett Lauder and bringing in Dylan Cease when you've already gone out and signed Frankie Montas, and you've already gone out and signed insurance and Nick Martinez, and you've already got guys that are going to have to scratch and claw and fight their way for an opportunity to crack the rotation in 2024. I just don't see that what he would have added to this rotation as it's built right now this week when this deal went down. I just don't see that the addition of what he brings would have been enough to give anything away at this point. I think if the Reds are going to look at something that they've got and say, we're going to roll with what we got, and we're going to talk about this coming up in relationship to the outfield. If you're going to say we're happy with what we got, let's roll. I think the starting pitching right now is in that lane. They have enough depth. They have enough talent to be okay.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think when they were looking for somebody, and John Updike brings out the point, Rhett Lauder, talking about in the spring breakout, the prospect game last night, Lauder showed in 2 innings that he's ready to pitch to pro hitters and overmatch them. He's got great stuff. And, he was a guy I got a chance to talk to after the Reds drafted him. He is not a hurler. He's not a thrower. He is a pitcher. He has had to pitch his entire baseball life. So he knows how to get guys out. And I think that is such a key intangible for any pitcher, let alone somebody who hasn't made it to the major leagues yet, that he is going to be starting with such a high floor. I think that's a reason. I mean, I've seen Jim Kalis talk about this. I think I even saw, and I hesitate to mention this guy's name on the pod, but Keith Law said that he could make the major leagues this year. Keith Law said something positive about the Reds, first of all, but I'm just saying, he has got that much talent.
Now we're going to get blocked.
Yeah, he's got that much talent that even Keith Law saying, man, he could make the major leagues right now. And the good news is he doesn't have to. We've talked about this in the past, that you don't have to rush him. So, yeah, I think if I really, if you're putting a gun to my head, would I have done that deal, Rhett Lauder in it? I guess I wouldn't have.
Would have. Oh, Jeff, you're fired.
Would not have.
Would not have. Oh, okay.
Would not have.
All right. Yeah. Enunciate,
Wouldn't
sir.
Because I spent the entire offseason.
I was about to saddle you with the worst hashtag of your life. So lucky you clarified.
I spent the entire offseason saying trade for Dylan Cease, and then seeing this and seeing Lauder. And I know it's spring training, but I don't know, man. I think the Reds got it right.
And it's not about saying, well, Rhett Lauder threw 2 scoreless innings against some other prospects. Right. We're not going to do it. Look at that. My God. No, it's not about that. It's about the other moves. It's about what else Nick Krall has done. That urgency for a starting pitcher, which existed when you started on this Dylan Cease hype train, that urgency was addressed. A lot of those things were taken care of. They didn't go get a bona fide ace, but I don't know that Dylan Cease is a bona fide ace. I mean, he's good, but he does. I don't know that he strikes fear in the hearts of the opponents that are coming, So I just, it's more about the other moves for me. It's not about preserving prospect capital or saving him for another deal. It's really more about if there's still something to address on this team now, 12 days away from opening day, it's not the starting rotation. It's the outfield.
Yes, it's definitely the outfield. And I think we're going to have a little bit deeper conversation about this next week, but I do kind of want to start it because, and we'll carry it on over into next week, but because we're running into where we want to start talking with the folks, and we got lots of folks talking. But to start the conversation, I wrote this article over at InsideTheReds.com. Adam Duvall signed for 1 year, $3 million to the Braves yesterday. Michael A. Taylor is still out there, but the fact that he is still out there, nobody's calling him, the Reds aren't calling him, leads me to believe that the Reds believe what they have in house is what they're going to be, is their best bet. And what they have in house is either A, best shape of his life, Stuart Fairchild, or B, Will Benson, Jake Fraley hitting left-handed pitching. And I feel like either one of those, while I could see it happening, you know what a bold prediction is? A bold prediction is that either one of those options turns out to be the right choice. I'm just saying, because right now I don't see it. Like, we have to see it on the field. And you can tell me until you're blue in the face that somebody's in the best shape of their life. But what's that mean whenever Stuart Fairchild is going up against Freddie Peralta, or Stuart Fairchild's going up against Shota Imanaga, or Stuart Fairchild's going up against these big time dudes who are keyed up and in regular season form and not in spring training, just trying to get ready for the season.
All right, Jeff, let's spend a couple more minutes on this. Before we go into the break, I just want to go over this from Josh. Says the Reds have got to go get Michael A. Taylor now that they lost out on bringing back Duvall, unless they go with Josh Harrison as the extra infielder / outfielder. So you've set up the Fairchild conversation. Let's talk about Fairchild versus Harrison coming back out of this break that we're very, very late.
Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing television, and it provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the college basketball tournament, or, you're going to watch basketball, there's hockey going on too. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports with March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. I love the cooking videos. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. In between episodes, you can follow us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. And I mentioned InsideTheReds.com. We are writing about the Reds over there. Steve, myself, James Rapine, Rick Uccino, Austin Elmore, Caleb Sisk, a lot of great folks writing about the Reds at InsideTheReds.com. Bookmark it today. And join the Locked On Reds Discord page. A lot of great folks talking Reds baseball all throughout the year. The link is in the description of today's episode.
All right, Jeff, let's dive back into this outfield conversation, and we're going to start with this because I love it. Jared says, you guys will need to do a whole episode apologizing to Stuart Fairchild in person when he proves you guys wrong this year. All right. Qualifiers. He has to be on the roster all year. Now, if he gets hurt, it still counts. But what I'm saying is he can't be sent down to AAA. He has to be on the roster the whole year. What does his OPS plus have to be for us to do a Stuart Fairchild tribute episode at the end of the 2024 season? What does the OPS plus have to be?
See, it's funny because you mentioned OPS plus. I was about to be like, well, we are not going to apologize him if he hits 230 instead of 225. Let's see.
Get in the comments, guys. What should our number be?
OPS plus. His career OPS plus in the couple of years that he's been in the majors is 95. I will say if he has a 110 OPS plus, we will do a Stuart Fairchild.
Okay.
I do not think. Look, I think he's replacement level. I think he is replaced. And
Yeah.
look, I'm not trying to say this to like downplay the guy. I want to be wrong about him. I'd love it if he goes out and he has 30 home runs. Hey, look at that, Austin B, 110 OPS. But if you look at his career to this point, right now, anyone that is saying they know that he can be good is looking at tiny sample sizes, and in some cases, game by game basis. And that's just not how a player works in Major League Baseball. Like, he is going to be called upon to get 30% of the at-bats in the outfield. And as of right now, 30% of the at-bats in the outfield, we can expect a guy who has a career batting average of 230 and a guy whose slugging percentage eclipses 400 by 2 points. I
like this from Joey G. I think 110 sounds realistic as a high side, but to earn a tribute episode, to get us to don Stuart Fairchild jerseys and sing his praises at the end of the year, I'm going with 115, Jeff. If he doesn't get demoted all year and performs at a 115 OPS plus level, we will do the Stuart Fairchild tribute episode at the end of the season.
Fun fact. Who do you have a higher OPS against? Righties or lefties?
I think he was reversed, wasn't he? I believe that he was reversed last. Yeah.
He had a 716 OPS against righties and just a 700 OPS against lefties.
So
look, he got on base 30, like almost 35% of the time, but he didn't hit. And I just don't want there to be a black hole. Like, literally, if a pitcher goes up against Stuart Fairchild this year, they should be challenging him. They should be filling up the strike zone. Because to this point in his career, the damage that Stuart Fairchild has done has been on the base paths, not with the bat.
Oh, this comment section is just lit today, Jeff.
I don't want to be this guy,
Stuart
but this
Fairchild
tribute. I don't get.
God,
I don't get it. Like, Michael A. Taylor is a much better option. They should go get him.
Yeah, but I think you're right. Their lack of signals that they're going to roll with what they got. So Stuart Fairchild, the floor is going to be yours. And then the question then is, does that mean Josh Harrison comes along for the ride and is your Jose Barrero-esque last man on the roster, infield, outfield substitution type dude? I think that might be where we're heading.
The only other guy with the position flexibility that rivals Harrison is Tony Kemp. But between those two, I'd rather have Harrison. And I think that with Harrison's ability to play in the middle infield decently well, he can be an emergency break glass in case of emergency option to throw in the infield. If you really need him in the outfield, you could try that. I would rather that spot on the bench be just a big bat, be Martini, or I know I poo-pooed this earlier, but maybe Mike Ford, but I'd much rather Nick Martini. But I think
aren't they both left-handers?
Right, and they're not very flexible in their position.
Yeah, too many left-handers. I mean, I think because you have to circle back to the beginning where you kind of went before the Stuart Fairchild thing derailed us a little bit, but otherwise you're going with Benson Fraley, lefty, and whatever you do needs to give you some flexibility to get out of that if you have to. So yeah. I can't. So I mean, I don't think you're wrong about Martini. I like what he's been able to do. I like the pop in his bat. Absent, one of Benson or Fraley, then I'm all in on having Martini on this roster as a guy. So if one of those guys gets tweaked somewhere along the way in the season and you're looking for that replacement bat, I think Martini's a viable option then. I don't like having the three of them on the roster together.
Yeah, I think that the outfield is just so tough, man. And look, the same fervor with which I doubt Stuart Fairchild, as much as I love Will Benson, I kind of doubt that he can hit lefties. That's the same kind of doubt that I have there. Like, and I know he's been working on it, but again, off-season work and practice environments is nothing compared to when the lights are on at Great American and you're going up against, I'm trying to think of like a hardcore left-handed relief pitcher that they got to worry about, but just insert that guy here. Like, think about, I don't know, Josh Hader.
Aroldis Chapman.
Thought we were going to get through the whole episode.
No, I wasn't
him
gonna,
at all.
I was not going to let that happen. Was not going to let that
video.
happen.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
To your point, Jeff, I think the thing with Will Benson is, could he hit lefties? He could hit lefties, but he's not going to learn to do that in Goodyear. If the Reds want Will Benson to hit lefties, a commitment's going to have to be made to run him out there against lefties all the time in April and May and watch him flail and struggle while he figures it out. This team can't afford to do that. We've talked about April needing to be an April that doesn't look like Aprils of past where they fall apart. They need to jump out early. They need to score runs. They need to build up a lead in the National League Central, and they need to run away with this thing. And you don't get to do that by experimenting in April with guys trying to learn something new on the fly.
No, I 1000% agree. But I think that's the gist of kind of the analysis. Like, we can dive deeper into it and look at it next week. I do believe we're going to do that, because I think that, and I know some folks have worried about the runs scored against the pitching staff so far this spring training. I'm not worried about that at all. I think they're going to be fine. What I worry about is the outfield. I think that has jumped the pitching staff in my mind. Like, where we were coming into the season, our most interesting position group was the starting rotation. I think the outfield has jumped that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, and it's the area they didn't address, right? So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, it was a problem. It was a concern. And now it has become the problem and the concern because they addressed the starting rotation and the bullpen. So here we are at the 36-minute mark, Jeff. So do we want to wrap for audio or all right? So that's going to do it for the audio folks. Video folks, stick around. Q&A continuing on. For the audio folks, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked on Reds. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day, everydayers. Coming up just a little bit later in your feeds will be the Q&A portion that's coming up right now live on YouTube. And if you want to participate in that Q&A live on YouTube, just watch for us. Click the subscribe and notification bells over on YouTube, and it will let you know every single time that we go live. And in the meantime, we will be in your feeds, keeping you up to date on all of the latest news, information, rumors, and transactions to keep you locked on Reds every single day. All right, Jeff, let's cook with this Q&A. The comment section's been great today. They already have us planning our Stuart Fairchild tribute band, so that's going to be fun.
What's it going to be called?
So we're not doing that.
Chat.
No, I'm not doing that. Do you want to talk about do you want to talk about Aroldis Chapman? Just out of curiosity.
Is it going to be the Stuart Fairchild and Jeff Hoffman experience?
That probably is right, because you already have the jerseys, so save you some money.
Jeff Hoffman, a better Philly than a Red. I know that.
All right, guys. So if you had questions earlier in the chat, put them back in. Let's just do them like that so that I can save on the endless scrolling, because you guys have been lit over here today. So,
by the way, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Danny checks in.
Slanche.
Danny checks in with his bold prediction, saying that David Bell will allow 2 complete games this year.
Oh,
says, man,
okay.
OG SPs are rolling in their graves. I think. Ooh. All right, Jeff, an over under.
Because I had to set the over under at 1.5.
Over under at 1.5. I agree. That is spot on.
Interesting.
What would you do? Because I'm not sure what I would do with an over under of 1.5.
Well, the first question for you is, how many did they have last year?
They had 0. They had none.
0. And you're talking about a rotation that is full of guys that have come up through the minor leagues with the idea that you have to go full effort all the time. And I feel like the Reds have been training them back, like trying to rein them in from there. Yeah, it's funny to think, like, and I don't even know if you have to go that old school, like OG starting pitchers, like maybe pitchers from 10 years ago might be like, really? 2 complete games is bold? I think it's bold. I think Danny's got a good one there, because I think I'd take the under on that one.
Yeah, I think the under. If I'm using my money and not like your money, if I'm using your money, I'll take the over, Jeff. If you're gonna float me, $20, I'll throw $20 on the over. But if it's my money, I'm taking the under. I don't see the Reds hitting on that one. Let's go here, because I'm curious your thoughts. The RoboBuck asks, could we see Rhys Hines this season? Just don't think he's quite there yet. Maybe if there's a tremendous jump during the minor league season, we could see him August, September. But there's a whole lot of ifs involved in seeing Rhys Hines this year. I just don't know that he's there yet.
His biggest challenge is the fact that, I mean, if you're worried about Elly De La Cruz's strikeout percentage, Rhys Hines said, hold my beer, because it's way higher than Elly's was. And I think that he's got the power, and he's got a game-changing like power about his swing. He just doesn't make contact enough. And I think that he's got to prove that this year. I think if we see him at all, it'll be late in the season.
Yeah, and staying in the outfield lane, I'm not going to go back and find the comment, but I'll paraphrase it.
Talking about Blake Dunn, yeah.
Blake Dunn. That I want to talk about that for a minute. While I agree that Blake Dunn right now is probably as good as Stuart Fairchild, probably. But the idea is you're not going to promote Blake Dunn to the major league level and have him be your fifth outfielder. And you have to ask yourself, are you willing to bring up Blake Dunn and sit down Will Benson for most of the time? Are you willing to sit down Spencer Steer in order to play Blake Dunn some? I don't think I'm willing to do any of those things. I think the best course of action with Blake Dunn is to get him to AAA, let him play April, May, see where we're at in June. If there's an injury need and Dunn is delivering like he did last year, and let's not kid ourselves, he knocked the cover off the ball last year. If that continues, then maybe we're having a conversation about Blake Dunn somewhere around June. I don't think the right play for him is to bring him up and make him at the far end of this bench and slow down his development. Just remember what happened with Jose Barrero.
Yeah, and that's kind of the hardest part about discussing who's at the end of the bench and who is a platoon partner and stuff like that. Like, I always think of guys like Phil Ervin. Like, I thought Phil Ervin was a good example of a platoon outfielder, a guy that I don't think anybody ever kind of ascribed everyday outfielder to, just because he could not hit against right-handed pitching at all, but he killed lefties. And that was why he and Jesse Winker kind of formed this very strong platoon out there in left field. What was that, 2018? Something like that? I mean, a few years back. That's kind of what you're looking for in the Stuart Fairchild position. So if Fairchild pans out, then that's where that's the role that he is supposed to play. We don't want Blake Dunn playing the Stuart Fairchild role, playing the Phil Ervin role. Honestly, I think the ideal scenario for him is that he takes over for TJ Friedl. And it's not like TJ Friedel's growing anywhere. He's not old. I don't think they're trading him in the middle of a pennant chase. But if, like, next offseason, there's a situation where the Reds can get better in a different area and TJ Friedl is involved in that trade, then they can bring up Blake Dunn and make him the center fielder. Because it's really hard to find center fielders out on the open market. There's not a lot of true center fielders anymore when it comes to guys who are good with the bat and with the glove. So I think that you're not bringing up Blake Dunn, like you said, and 30% of the at-bats is not enough to give a guy like Blake Dunn. You got to be giving him close to everyday playing time if you're bringing him up.
All right, let's talk pitching. Joey G's asking for our picks on the bullpen right now. So we're going to put some qualifiers on this. I think they're going to break camp with 9 relievers. Yep. I think they'll carry 4 starting pitchers until that second turn through the rotation. So if they're bringing 9 pitchers to Cincinnati with them when they break camp, obviously Alexis Diaz will be one of those guys. Lucas Sims. Yeah. Buck Farmer,
Brent Suter,
Nick Martinez, Suter,
Emilio Pagan,
that's 6. TJ Antone and Justin Wilson. That's 8.
So
Fernando Cruz.
9th will be interesting.
Yeah.
Depending on how much importance they put on the spring performances, Fernando Cruz has kind of looked a little rough here these last couple of outings. And we always say that doesn't translate to the season, so I'm not saying that he's just going to be bad because he has shown lots of talent last year. It's between him and Jabot's not going to be ready. He's going to start the year on the injured list. Probably, and if Mullen and and Young are both hurt, yeah, I think it's got to be. I think it's got to be Cruz, and
That's
and,
what
and
I think so too.
he had a better strikeout percentage than Alexis Diaz did last year. So he is a good pitcher. He's just had a rough spring. Everybody can have a rough spring. So I don't see that as being a problem at all.
So Jessam asks this, and let's do this for a starter and for a reliever. Who is one pitcher that you think we can actually rely on? I'll go first. Starting rotation, Graham Ashcraft's my guy here. He's a guy that I rely on him to come out, take his turn, do things. He'll have some struggles. Everybody does, but he's kind of the Mr. Consistent. I think that's the guy I'm looking at there for a starter. And in the bullpen, I think Alexis Diaz is like the money guy out there. That's the guy you can rely on when he comes into the game.
I think for me, I find it hard to argue against Graham Ashcraft, but I will with Andrew Abbott. I think that the more that we have seen of him, I think he really was just tired at the end of last season. I think he's going to be a guy that they can rely on every fifth day. And then out of the bullpen, Brent Suter. Whenever he is called upon this season, I am going to be excited because not only will he stop that inning that he's called into, he might pitch one or two more innings on top of that and really not only help out the starter for that day and give the Reds a good chance to win, but he's also going to save the bullpen as well. We don't have 8-9 guys out there anymore that they can only go one inning, and we're really stretching it if we ask them to go for 2 innings. We've got a couple of guys out there now that can go 2, 3, 4 innings with him and Nick Martinez. But I think Brent Suter for me, like I love Alexis Diaz, but I think Brent Suter's right there with him as far as reliability is concerned.
This from Alex Jones. Let's make this happen. Reds versus Cardinals 2025 Aloha Series in Hawaii. Well, first off, there's no place to play.
I'd have to go, right? I'd
now.
have to go.
They're building a new stadium right now, so we'll have to push that down the road 2026. But the powers that be, if you're watching, make that happen. I'll go to that. That would be great.
That'd be a lot of fun.
This from Jared. He says he thinks the Maley and Fairchild people understand their value as a bench piece, not starters. I'm not even talking about value as a starter. We've talked about Luke Maley. They're bringing him back was a great move by the Reds because he's an excellent catcher number 2 and because he knows the pitching staff. We talked about the praises of Luke Maley in the backup role. I'm not convinced that Stuart Fairchild is a valuable bench piece because he's never really shown us more than being a 4A guy when maybe there's a better option available. Michael A. Taylor would be a better option. He's a big leaguer that can hit left-handed pitching. He would be a better option. Stuart Fairchild, and apparently the floor is going to be his, Jeff. He's going to have to go out and prove it now. And there's going to be, every time he does something great, the timelines are going to explode with, see, we told you. And every time he strikes out, the other half is going to be, the guy's a bum. He's always been a bum. We told you he's a bum.
And I'm not going to do that. I am not going to sit here and like in a game where he starts and he goes 0 for 4 or something like that. I'm not going to get on here and be like, I told you so. Because I want him to pan out. But I just don't know that I see it. Like he is a guy that if he is called upon for like a week, 2 weeks, I'm kind of okay with that. Whole season, don't know that he can do that. I just don't know that he is able to do that right now. So I want to be wrong about it. But yeah, no, I'm not going to. We're not going to go day to day on this thing. The whole season, like we talk about
watch 2024.
Watch, yeah, really. God save us. But sample size is a huge thing, and the sample size is not saying, yeah, day by day we're really going to overreact to statistical performances.
All right, let's talk a little bit about opening day. Brian asked, can we get a Locked On Reds pregame opening day meetup? Would love to raise a glass with y'all. Jeff, do we want to put it out there what we're doing? I might leave it up to you. I don't care.
We are definitely going to be down there early on Thursday.
We're gonna be wandering around the banks. Let's just put it like that. I don't want to pick a particular spot. We are going to be in the banks. We're going to be there early. We're going to be wandering around and we're going to be beveraging. So I will, if it's warm enough, I'll be in my jersey with my name on it. I'll be easy to find. I'm the bald guy. There you go. If I'm in a jacket, it'll be the 90s throwback that I had on the other day. If you see us, come talk to us. We're happy. We're happy to talk baseball. So I don't want to overwhelm a place or, crash the rest of the group, but we're going to be there. We're going to be out and about. Come talk to us.
Yeah. And it's really hard to say that you're going to be in one spot on opening
Right.
day before the game, because that one spot will likely be too full to have anybody around but yourself. But yeah, I think at some point we're going to hit up Smoke Justice. That's usually a given on opening day.
Probably during the live remote. That's generally when we go.
Yeah.
So if
Usually like to
they're
go
on
say
the
hi,
air
yeah.
from Smoke Justice, we're over there. Probably. So come say hi there. If not, we're walking
I think
the
it's
banks.
noon to 3.
Right. We will probably be in our seats half the time during the game. You see us at the stadium, come say hi. We want to talk baseball with you guys, so come find us. We're going to be there for sure. Randy with this, he wants to circle back to the complete game conversation. Says Ashcraft and Green each get one. I don't see it.
Least two.
Ashcraft could get one. Ashcraft could maybe stumble his way into one.
Green
Remember
already
that the
has
great
one.
He does. Remember that the great equalizer in this equation is David Bell staying the hell out of the way. And I don't know that I would bet any money on that. I don't know that I would bet any money on that.
That question is twofold now, because he has a really good bullpen to turn to.
Right.
Like that's the other part of this is Hunter
I don't see
Green
it.
got his complete game because I think everyone and their mother had pitched on like 3 straight days, and they were like, yeah, we can't really throw anybody. So go on out there, Hunter.
Debbie Brown is a faithful viewer, Jeff. We see her name come across all the time. And sometimes she's got some like hot takey comments over here, and she's got one today, and I want to discuss it. Debbie Brown checks in and says, Maile is better than Stevenson. Maile can hit.
Last year he was.
Last year,
I'm not even sure he had a better OPS. Did he?
So last year, I think the issue was much more about Tyler Stevenson not being Tyler Stevenson, as it was Maile doing something extra special, right? I think that injury impacted Tyler Stevenson much more than he ever let on, and I think it took a while. He was 87 in OPS plus,
They were the same.
slash line of 243, 317, 378. If we are going to talk Luke Maile, his slash line was 235, 308, 391. So he had a higher slugging percentage, but Tyler Stevenson was on base more and hit for better average. OPS plus wise, 87. They were both 13% below league average.
And what I don't know, because I think that the Reds have a very strong catcher tandem, because both these guys I'm okay with behind the plate. Defensively, I'm worried about them. They need to improve, especially on the framing. Both these guys are horrible at framing. But if you're talking about at the plate, what I don't know about Luke Maile is he played less than half the at-bats than Tyler Stevenson got last year. And part of that was they were trying to work Tyler Stevenson in at multiple positions and stuff. But Tyler Stevenson had 400 at-bats while Luke Maile had 180. And I'm rounding there. There's, give or take a few. But the point of that is, what does Luke Maile look like with 420 at-bats? And we saw Tyler Stevenson with much smaller sample sizes than he gave last year. Like his year that he was hurt and he only played 50 games, those 50 games looked phenomenal. And we were convinced that that's who he was and that he was going to be a middle-of-the-order hitter for his career. And then we saw him over a full season. We're like, oh, okay, he took a step back. I think he's going to bounce back this year, and I think he will be better than Luke Maile. But I think that Luke Maile is a great number 2 option. I don't want it to make it seem like I'm disparaging Luke Maile in any way, but I still think that Tyler Stevenson is catcher 1, and I don't think it's as close of an argument as some folks like to make it out to be. So, Debbie, I appreciate the take. I don't agree.
Yeah, I don't agree either. I mean, I will say that Luke Maile was a pleasant surprise last year. I was really happy with what he brought to this team, and I was really glad they re-signed him, because I think it brings some stability to the pitchers as well. We didn't bring in another backup catcher that's going to have to build that rapport with these young pitchers and learn how they like to throw, what they like to throw, when they like to throw it. So I think he's valuable to have around. I really do.
I remember last off season feeling more excited about the Kurt Casale signing than the Luke Maile signing. boy, was I wrong. Except for the Ricky Karcher game. That was magical. But Kirk Casale, outside of the Ricky Karcher game, was almost unplayable, and Luke Maile was a revelation.
Ricky Karcher, bless his heart.
I will never forget that game.
I lost where the comment went, but basically there was a comment about Alexis Diaz still throwing too many balls. Does he need to be more pitch? I mean, everyone needs to be more pitch efficient, right? Are you concerned about that?
I think, especially in spring training, he's just trying to get his pitches in. We'll see how he starts off the season. If he is getting the full count after full count after full count in the month of April, then he's going to drastically reduce his longevity during the season. And I think that that's going to be a little bit concerning, but he is still one of the top 5, maybe top 8 closers in the game, I believe.
Kenneth Huber is worried about Candelario having a Dante Bichette first month.
He's an interesting player because he's a line drive hitter. And we know what happened with Nick Castellanos his first year, 2020, his first year as a Red. He actually wasn't all that great. Like, we remember his 2021 as being phenomenal, but 2020 he wasn't all that great. So how does Candelario look? Is he more like 2020? Because everybody has compared his hit profile to Nick Castellanos and thinking that, all right, is he going to look more like 2021 Nick Castellanos? And I'm not even just saying production wise, but just line drives, average exit velocity, things like that. I don't necessarily know. I think there's a lot of folks right now that are expecting him to fail, and I don't see that. Now, what does success look like for Candelario? I just want him to bat 250, 260, have a slugging percentage of around 450, and be a solid middle of the order guy. Like, I don't need him to be the MVP of this team.
And we're not talking cleanup hitter either. I mean, you're talking 5, you're talking
5,
6,
6, something like that.
Yeah, I guess there's a concern with anybody that they're not going to pan out, but his track record says that over the course of 162 games, he's going to be valuable to this team. And he's already proving to be valuable to this team because Noelvi Marte couldn't behave. So,
right.
I'm ready to cut him a little slack that he's not, been knocking the cover off the ball in Goodyear, and wait and see what happens and give him some time to mesh and settle into a routine. So word is from the folks out in Goodyear, though, that he's playing a decent third base in the reps that he's getting over there, which, that was a knock, right? That he can't play. Look, the Cubs wouldn't even play him at third base. He can't play third base. Well, he's going to play third base. So it's good to hear that he's at least looking halfway decent over there.
Cubs also had Christopher Morel, who they wanted to get at bats. So they were like, yeah, we'll hit him at third base. I did just look this up, and I'm curious if you know this, because I did not know this, but it just adds to the legend that was Kirk Casale on the Ricky Karcher game. Do you know who started that game?
No, all I remember is Kirk Casale saving the world.
Kirk Casale diving for his life every time Ricky Karcher threw a pitch. Luke Weaver started that game. So he had a heck of a day behind the plate. Poor Kirk Casale that day.
Oh, we got Al Leiter, Luke Weaver. We're getting them all in today. Let's just say the names, right? Aroldis Chapman, Luis Cessa, Connor Overton. Let's just say them all.
Just get it all out. Get all the
and hats off to this comment section, because nobody I teed it up for them to do the Aroldis Chapman stuff, and they didn't really. You guys let that one sail right on by.
Yeah, and what's so funny, comments, I just saw this come across too, because the game was supposed to start with the Royals. Nick Lodolo's pitching today. Supposed to start at 4:05. It's been pushed back at least 30 minutes. Wonderful Arizona weather.
You gotta love it. All right, here we go. How much time from Cameron? How much time do we expect Jonathan India to split with McLain at second base? Not a lot.
80-20.
So Jonathan India, McLain's going to be very limited in number of off days. If he's healthy, he'll be one of the guys that gets into the 150s range on games played. That being said, the few that he does have off, India will be your guy there. The games that Elly De La Cruz has off, which will also be sporadic, I think McLain moves over to shortstop. Those days, Jonathan India is at second. Outside of that, I
don't
think much
count
more
out-
first base, left field.
Don't count out Spencer Steer either. Spencer Steer's best infield position, second base.
He may get a few there, but I mean, if your choice is all right, Ellie's got a day off, so we're gonna move Matt McLain to shortstop. Do we move Spencer Steer to second base and put Jonathan India in left field, or do we leave Spencer Steer in left field and put Jonathan India at second base? I think the answer is you leave Steer in left field and put India at second base.
Or is it a right-handed pitcher and you've got Elly on the bench, you Matt McLain at short, you got Steer at second, India in the DH, and you got Fraley, Friedel, and Benson in the outfield.
That works. So okay, well maybe so.
But I think it's still probably an 80-20. Like, okay, so it can't be 80-20. So I think it'd be 75-25 as far as the percent split between McLain, India, and Steer, and how much they're going to play second base. I mean, it's going to be a lot. McLain's going to play second base a lot.
Yeah, I think 75 sounds low. I play 85, 90% of the games at second base, and the times he's not there is going to be very few and far between. All right, let's get a few more in here. Here's one. John says he thinks Harrison gets more innings at second base than India does.
That's bold.
If that happens, that's a problem.
That's bold.
That's really bold. Talk about big swings. Nah.
It's
India's gonna have more.
It's a big problem, or it means he really took to left field. 6-1, half dozen the other. You know, look at a half full or half empty.
All right, let's find a couple more here, Jeff, and then we'll call it a day. It's moving so fast, I can't get to them. They're running away from me.
Getting them in.
All right, who gets less playing time out of Steer and Benson with India getting into the lineup? Who does that impact more? Steer's an everyday player. So Steer may move off of left field, but he's not going to sit a lot. He'll DH, he'll second base, he'll do other things. Benson, I think, is your guy with the platoons.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think it affects Benson. I think that it doesn't necessarily affect anybody. India just got positively affected by Marte's suspension. Like I don't think we understood how little, not that he was never going to play, but how much his playing time was going to get cut if Marte hadn't have gotten suspended for PEDs. Like I just didn't see how he was going to get into the lineup every day with the other guys that were on this team. He can do that now in some form or fashion, being a super utility guy. But the reason he's going to be in the outfield is because the Reds are facing a left-handed pitcher, so Will Benson's not going to be in the game. And I'm starting to I don't know. I wonder how much we're going to see him in the outfield, because we've only seen him one game out in the outfield so far in spring training.
So let's get two more comments in here, and then we'll call it a day, Jeff. Ken doubles down on you. He's got Weller going to match your Guinness.
It's
Ken, you are my man.
Patty's Day weekend. All right,
save me some Weller.
Slanche.
Ken, save me some Weller. You can bring it down to the banks on opening day. Appreciate you.
St. Patty's
Josh,
means one or the other. Yeah.
Josh, with this, and just this first sentence, I want to touch. Rhett Lauder to Josh is untouchable. Do you believe in untouchable prospects, Jeff? I do not.
No.
I think there's some that will cost more than other, but I would trade Rhett Lauder in a New York minute if the return was right. You know, you have to be willing to trade the prospect capital in the right scenario, no matter what the name is.
I think, and the problem with untouchable means you would never ever trade them. Like if the Guardians came to the Reds today and said Bieber and Clase for Rhett Lauder, you're trading Rhett Lauder. Like the Bieber Clase trade would just be ridiculous, and they're not going to do that.
In a 2-for-1, absolutely.
Right.
You offer to drive Rhett up yourself.
Right. Or heck, if it's Class A for Rhett Lauder, I think I would take that. Like there are deals.
I wouldn't do that.
There are deals that you would make that Yeah, yeah, maybe not. But I'm saying like there's deals that you would make. I think it would be really, really hard to trade Rhett Lauder at this point. His hype is very, very high, and I think that he has a very high likelihood of living up to the hype, which is an important part of the hype. But I think that overall, saying that a prospect is untouchable, I can't do that.
So let's wrap up with this then, Jeff. Do we see Rhett Lauder in Cincinnati this year? Because I really want to continue to advocate for them telling him that he will not make the major leagues in 2024. I want him to do a full season in the minor leagues, working on his craft, working on his game, and getting himself ready to compete for a starting rotation spot in 2025. I don't want that constant, every single start I have to go out there and nail this because I'm trying to get to Cincinnati this year. I want him to know that it's not an option.
I think if we do, it's going to be for like a doubleheader and it's going to be later on in the season. Like we're talking after the All-Star break, maybe even after August, where it's a doubleheader or it's some kind of crazy situation that they need to bring up somebody. And they're like, you know what, let's give him a taste and at least get him a little bit acclimated. And then next year he's competing for a rotation spot because age-wise, maturity-wise, he's ready, but he doesn't have to be in the big leagues this year. I firmly believe that. And honestly, it will be a competition next year because there are still 6, 7 really good young pitchers in this system that could man the starting rotation next season. And we already know 3 or 4 of them that are probably just going to be penciled into the rotation as soon as this season ends. So I think that he does not have to be up at any point this season. If he's up at all, it's not even going to be a cup of coffee. It's going to be like a sip of espresso.
All right. On that note, if you have not clicked the like button, do so if you're having a good time. And we're happy to have you here. We love talking Reds with you. Appreciate you guys hanging with us for the last hour. That is going to do it for this Aloha Friday live edition of Locked On Reds. Programming note, next Friday will be the final Aloha Friday live edition of the show for the off season. We will have some lives sprinkled in throughout the year, but the every Friday lives, next Friday is going to be the last one for the year. So make sure that you join us. Make sure you have clicked the subscribe button, click the like button. We want to have you here because we love talking Reds baseball with you. And on that note, Jeff, wrap it up.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Coming up next week, we will continue our discussion as the Reds get ready for opening day. We're less than 2 weeks away. Cannot wait. And you can trust that we're going to be plugged into everything going on out in Goodyear, Arizona, because we are Locked On Reds every single day.
Hashtag Jeff loves Dylan Cease.
I mean, yeah, he's good.